Marvel Snap's newest card, High Evolutionary, is one of the most anticipated releases of the entire existence of the game and is already shaking up the meta based almost entirely on the fact that everyone wanted this card and everyone saved for it and everyone bought it. So let's look at a couple of the top High Evolutionary decks and talk about the context that everyone playing High Evolutionary creates, because I think that's the most important thing to understand, because there are going to be people who don't have High Evolutionary that want to know how to beat High Evolutionary, and we will cover that in this video, as well as how to play High Evolutionary. So let's jump into it. Now, this is the best High Evolutionary deck that I found on day one. It's kind of exactly what we were planning on playing. Just put High Evolutionary in Thanos and see what's good. But here's the surprising bit to me, is that we end up not playing any of the, Thing, Cyclops, Abomination, negative power synergy, and instead we just have the Hulk as an additional Lockjaw target. We have our Wasp that is just generally a good card now, and that's really all that we're getting. You'll notice also that we have a Luke Cage in this list, and these are very related things. Because so many people bought High Evolutionary, there are going to be a ton of High Evolutionary mirrors. Because there are going to be a ton of High Evolutionary mirrors, a lot of people, including me, are playing Luke Cage. This is the current state of the metagame. It may not be like this forever, but because a lot of people are playing Luke Cage, you can't rely on Abomination being cheap. That's the fundamental issue. There's so much Luke Cage out there and so much High Evolutionary out there that anything that is really counting on those Abominations is likely to, or potentially, at least in the case of Thanos, going to be better off just not dealing with that at all. And I found that dynamic to be a little bit bothersome, because we just got this card, we want to do cool things with it, but instead of doing cool things with it, our metagame incentives are such that what we want to do is, splash it and then counter the people that are really invested in it. Luke Cage is phenomenal right now. If your opponent is not playing Luke Cage in a High Evolutionary Thanos mirror and you are probably going to win that, because if they're not playing Luke Cage, they're likely more invested into the Thanos stuff than you are. The High Evolutionary stuff, I should say. My apologies. Now, this is just kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't love having to play Luke Cage. I don't love that the only bit of investment I get in this strategy is Hulk and Wasp. I do think it's, probably a little bit better than the normal Thanos, but it's not like the biggest upgrade in the world. And the reason it's not the biggest upgrade in the world is because everyone is playing High Evo and everyone is playing Luke Cage. That seems pretty straightforward to me, but this is the sort of confines that High Evolutionary exists in. One card that I consider incredibly worth highlighting with High Evolutionary is Wave. So the major thing to understand about High Evolutionary and Wave is that High Evolutionary decks trend toward mid-rangey strategies. The Thing is like a 4/9. Abomination can be like a free card sometimes, but they're not like going over the top. You're not really going to end up at like 40 or 50 power on a location, or even really 30 a lot of the time. And because of that, Wave ends up being incredibly important for you to limit those strategies that can do this. So an example of a High Evo deck that you'd want to be able to counter with Wave is like a Moon Girl Abomination deck that's just playing 4 free cards on the final turn of the game. Wave turns that off entirely. The Kitty Pryde Bounce deck, I think, is the primary predator of non-Wave High Evolutionary decks. You just play too many points as the Kitty Pryde Bounce deck for any High Evolutionary deck that is not playing Wave or some way of slowing you down to actually come out on top. So I do think there is a little bit of a reality check coming for non-Wave High Evo builds, and so for this reason, most of the builds you're going to see in this video are going to include Wave. She is your prophylactic against getting absolutely rolled by turn 6 explosion strategies. And because a lot of what you do is so mid-rangey, and Thanos is like a notable exception to this, but not enough of an exception that you can afford to cut Wave. Like, you still need to run Wave in your Thanos decks. It is a phenomenal card against those Kitty Pryde lists, and It's another sort of situation where there's one card holding back basically an entire archetype from being dominant. So here is a list made by, I believe, Howling Minds that just eschews everything I talked about entirely. And I wanted to highlight it as a sort of example of what we could be getting once people stop running Loot Cage and Wave and everything. So we have this sort of very plausible Sera game plan. I've really enjoyed this. You end up playing Hazmat on like turn 4 or 5, and then, you know, if you don't draw Sera, you can cheat out an Abomination anyway. One of the things that really sticks out to me as to why this deck has been successful currently, though, is that it runs Enchantress for your opponent's Loot Cages. I had a game where my opponent played a Loot Cage on turn 2, and I snapped, and they retreated because they knew it would be Enchantress. Like, this is... The metagame is very inbred right now. This is definitely not necessarily something that will always be around, but one thing that struck me, again, when you talk about High Evolutionary, a lot of the High Evolutionary decks are very mid-rangey. So one way to succeed in beating a mid-range list is to go way over the top of it. The Iron Lad Patriot list and the aforementioned Kitty Pryde list are very effective at doing that. So you need to include in your mid-range deck some form of check for that. So instead of the Wave in the Thanos deck that we are using to check Kitty Prydes, we have Enchantress in here that we are using to check the Patriot decks. It's a sort of similar concept. Now, because we're so mid-rangey, it's very hard to fit all of those in the same deck, but I did try. So if you're looking for something a little more experimental, a shell that I think deserves to be worked on, you should take a look at this. Now, you can tell this is experimental because it still says Deck 20 on it, but the idea here is basically, what if we just had answers for everything in a High Evolutionary shell? The question, I think, is this actually better than just doing this with Darkhawk and Rock Slide? And I think, in terms of the answer to that, I would be inclined to say that the answer's no, it's not actually better than just doing this with Darkhawk and Rock Slide. You should just be playing like the old Darkhawk Rock Slide list. They're really good into Thanos. Putting rocks in their deck is genuinely messed up. But there is something to be said for a deck that just answers everything and has all of the cards that you want to play. I almost thought about trying to fit Sera back in here. My major worry with a list like this is, how do we beat the other Wave decks? And I think there's just a ton of customization left to be found with High Evolutionary, but I also think that a lot of his decks trend one of two directions. You're either like a mid-range deck or like a Moon Girl combo deck, and the mid-range decks are probably going to win out because Wave is a card, and because the Moon Girl combo decks, like, the only way the Moon Girl combo decks end up winning out is would be if they can actually beat the Kitty Pryde decks in terms of points. And while I think it's close, I actually think the Kitty Pryde decks are a little bit favored. So I guess the major thing I want you to take away from this is that High Evolutionary is a mid-range card and loses to things that beat mid-range cards. So let's take a look at a couple of those lists. Look, this list loses to Wave, but if you are running into a ton of High Evolutionary players who are having fun on the first day of High Evolutionary and are not covering their asses by playing Wave, you will farm them with this deck. That's just how it is. You will put more points on the board than they are capable of dealing with. Kitty Pryde is a snap if they're not playing Wave. It's literally that straightforward. Kitty Pryde beats everything that doesn't play Wave. That's what we're looking at here. She's an extremely powerful card in an extremely powerful shell, and Kitty Pryde Hitmonkey is an absolutely, or would be, I should say, an absolutely dominant strategy if all of the top decks could not splash for Wave. This again cycles back to why I think Thanos High Evolutionary is the best spot for him. Now, the reason for that is because you can be a Wave deck without giving up too much. So that is the major thing. When you look at the Thanos, or when you look at the High Evolutionary Doomwave list, you end up actually having to make real sacrifices like Darkhawk. That's a huge sacrifice to make. But if you look at the Thanos list, you're not sacrificing much. Now, the fact that you can make those sacrifices in the High Evo deck, you can, but is it the thing you want to be doing? So if you want to be beating people who are not playing Wave, I would highly recommend this list. As a note, I have run into people playing Luke Cage in the bounce deck, and yeah, go ahead and slap Luke Hazmat in there if you really want to. I just find that it's almost not necessary to beat the high Evo decks. That still all comes down to, do they play Wave? And you don't really get a ton out of Hazmatting people when everyone else is also playing Luke Cage. So generally, if I could opt out of the did you draw Luke Cage mirror, I will, so you see me not run. So next up is the Patriot Iron Lad list. There's not a lot of good places to run Enchantress right now. And that means that this kind of Patriot Iron Lad list is just gonna run people over. If you're not getting Enchantress, if you're not getting Super Scroll, this is a list that will put up more points than basically anything else. Debris is great into the kitty decks. Wave is great into the kitty decks. And if you want to beat High Evolutionary, ironically, the solution might be using some cards that have no abilities. You notice there's a Luke Cage in here, entirely a flex spot. I had Ultron in here, but my thought process was basically, okay, now that everyone is playing things like Hazmat, hitting Ultron is actually markedly worse off of an Iron Lad. You're already pretty vulnerable to Hazmat stuff if you don't draw everything correctly, so maybe get a little less vulnerable to Hazmat. We can include the Luke Cage. Obviously, that is a tech spot. You can kind of do whatever you want with that slot. This is what I would do right now. Now, the goal of this deck is simply to put as many points on the board as possible and ask the question, do you have an Enchantress? The same way that a kitty deck loses to Wave, this deck loses to Enchantress, or is at least very unfavored in matchups against it. But High Evolutionary, the reason to run Enchantress in High Evolutionary meta would be to hit your opponent's Luke Cage, and I don't know if we've gotten that degenerate yet. It's entirely possible that we have, and that this is a poor read, but I didn't see many Enchantresses opposing me on ladder, and so that makes me think this is a very, very viable way to go over the top. Now, this is just sort of a basic card game dynamic that I want to talk about here, is that mid-range lists lose to combo lists, and you see Kitty Pride and this deck as the combo lists of this game. They ask one question, and it's a yes or no question. It's, do you have Wave or do you have Enchantress? And if you can't answer that question, you're going to lose to them. And all of the high Evo decks tend to be mid-range lists, of course, with the exception of the like the soak decks that are very, very vulnerable, in my opinion, to... There's magic versions, they're vulnerable to Reality Stone in the Thanos lists, they're vulnerable to proper reads with a Wave, they're vulnerable to a lot of things. There's also non-magic versions that are vulnerable to Luke Cage and Wave just the same. Now, there is kind of... This is going to be a familiar dynamic to many card game players, but it's also going to be an unfamiliar dynamic to many people who are playing Marvel Snap. So if that is the one thing I want you to take away from this video, I really hope that you do. It is that High Evolutionary is mostly a mid-range card, and the proper way to use him depends entirely on the context of everything else that you're seeing. Because as a mid-range strategy, you need to adapt to everyone else. And so what we're seeing with these High Evolutionary lists is adaptation. This list adapted to the fact that all of its opponents were also playing High Evolutionary stuff by getting rid of all the stuff that loses to Luke Cage and running its own Luke Cage. Is that always going to be correct? Probably not. Not all the time is it going to be like this, but right now it is like this. And as a High Evolutionary player, you are going to have to understand your role and how you build your deck in terms of reacting to what other people are doing. So that is the one thing I want you to take away from this. The one lesson I feel like I can teach you about playing High Evolutionary this early is that it is a mid-range card for the most part. Obvious asterisk, Moon Girl decks. But for the most part, High Evolutionary decks are playing pretty mid-range games, and they need to be able to have checks for things that can go over the top of them. I've been KMBest. Thank you so much for watching. I truly, truly, truly appreciate it. We're going to put some gameplay on the back end of this video, so it's going to be a long one. I hope you enjoy being able to watch High Evolutionary in action, and I hope you genuinely take something informative away from this in terms of how to approach beating High Evolutionary and how to approach playing High Evolutionary in those bad matchups. So thank you so much. Have a good one. God, there's a lot of Machine World today. I don't know, dude. I just don't think I'm having fun playing these mirrors. Thank you? Wait, it doesn't give me High Evo version? Oh yeah, it does. Okay, cool. And that lets me save my time stone to play multiple 5s. I'm with it. This is cool by me. Big Hulk. Weird game. Full hand, probably gonna stay full. Okay. Oh my. This works, right? We lose 3, we gain 16, so we go to 22 plus 16 is 38, so we can play one of these wasps. Which means I think we die. I think we're dead. Wait, no, they're gonna fill up our hand by playing elsewhere, aren't they? They fill up my hand regardless. So I'll play both wasps. But I'm assuming I am dead. Cyclops. Power Stone. Power Stone. Yeah, we got him by 1, baby! Interesting card, High Evolutionary is. Okay, we have Time Stone Lockjaw. Oh. I will yeet the Time Stone out here, I suppose. Doom, very good on Death's Domain, of course. Leash doesn't hit Kitty. It's about the hit monkey, really. Another Grand Central. And they say location batching isn't real. Location batching is real, chat. Right, like, that's sort of what I'm wondering. Like, how about we try Thanos Lockjaw Evo, but without Evo and Hulk? And then we replace Luke and Wasp with some big boys. It's like, wait a minute. Are we sure this is making the deck better? That is the thought process where we have to wonder, isn't it? Like, it's like, oh, okay. Are we Fuck! Come on! Game? Wasp? The worst possible? Alright. Actually, let's do it like this so I can get my energy. I'm gonna get a turn of free energy here. And I'm not sure how I'm gonna use it, but I am gonna use it. Oh, Grand Central's the featured location? That's what I haven't been noticing? I see. I get it now. Thanos. Dope. So I feel like they're gonna count on this. And I don't want them to count on it. I don't want them to feel good about it. Move Lockjaw into deaths. Kitty Pride. Shangers, you're going to give me more shots? I guess most of my good shots are already in my hand, but they don't know. Oh my. Luke! So they already shangered, yeah? If they've already decided to shanger, I think I can do this pretty safely. They've shangered and inched. Maybe I get Absorbing Man. Why not lose Lockjaw Wasp and run Misty and Sunspot? Well, I don't want to lose Lockjaw and Wasp. That seems ridiculous. Shanger, I barely know her. Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, like, when you invest this heavily into one lane... They played Kitty after Shang? I don't think so. You literally can't play High Evo without Wasp. That's so troll. Agree. Whoa, what's going on in Death's Domain? Maximus, thank you. Luke Cage, I see you. No. No, no, no. No, 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 no. That's so troll. That is so troll. Anyway, yeah, that's what happens when you play 3-4 drops on one lane. It ends up being very hard to win the other. Because if you aren't playing wave or location control, I feel like you're going to get rolled by kitty stuff. But if you are playing wave and location control, much more plausible, right? I love vomiting stones into Altar of Death. See, my stones are slightly better. Stone Soul, Stone Space, Stone. You morph into... That's the best thing you could possibly morph into. Oh, fuck. I crushed that. Oh, that's so good. I just think that Thanos was kind of already this good. Is that stupid? Am I stupid for that? Do I throw my Wasp away here? I think I do. I think I do. Yeah, it was already good and got slightly better. That's pretty much my read. Is like, I kind of think this shit was already awesome and like got a little bit better. This doesn't feel like a massive improvement, you know? For free to play, would it be worth building the Lamby Thanos without high E? I mean, it's still probably completely fine, yeah. The question is going to be mirrors. Anyway, I'm doing this with the setup of, yeah. Yeah, look at that. No doubles. So they get leeched. I find it hard to believe that this doesn't win from here. Off the leech. Yeah. C2 OP, yeah. Maybe it is. Okay, this is the worst hand I've ever seen. Maybe we can Omega Red them with the Hulk. Shit, at least it's cards. Alright, what if we just Omega Red their ass? What if we just Omega Red their ass here? What if we just start balling? I guess we get shockered to death. Oh well. Claw, huh? Okay. I'm balling. I'm balling, bro. I'm balling. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. There's no way this shit works. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. You're gonna get hit with a Mystique. Look, literally anything is possible. Oh, I'm balling. Let's go. Wait, he's so fucking good? Spectrum right and you lose. Chat, this deck is not playing Spectrum. This deck is not even playing Claw. This shit came off of the hub, which, by the way, we could have checked and seen that they actually got a second Claw. That's very funny. They got a Claw again. Oh! Hey, Cam, how you liking High Evo? It's hard to tell right now where he'll end up in the meta because everyone is playing him. My instinct is he's a very mid-rangey card, which means if you're not playing him with Wave or with some way to beat Kitty Pride decks, so like maybe you're a Sera deck, you're in a lot of trouble. I think Sera is another thing I want to experiment with, but if you are playing Sera, basically what we're playing right now is what I think the best High Evo deck is, tuned for the meta we're in, because I would love to be playing Thing and Abomination in here, but I can't because everyone's playing fucking Luke Cage. And so because everyone is playing Luke Cage, I don't get to do the things that I want to do with High Evo. I have to do this instead. I think that's sort of the critical bit to understand here, is that this is not what full optimal theory crafted High Evo looks like, but that is a consequence of just how this meta has ended up. Drawing Evo absolutely sucks, correct. You've been smoking that Zaza, little bro? Damn, you're like the coolest person I've ever seen. Must be nice being you. Brutal! Still win it, right? Yeah. Whatever. 6 is enough. High Evo forgot to evolve himself. It's true. I'm assuming there's like some sort of bullshit ass turn 6 plan here. Where like they scam me out of Death's Domain with some ability on some card. That's not happening. In fact, no abilities are happening. Yeah. Nice try, dude. Imagine thinking you get to play cards with abilities. Fuck out of here, bro. If you top deck... Actually, I guess Arrow would be good. we'll play around Arrow the other way. Yeah. Shit. You got the Scarlet Witch, dude? Holy shit. Oh, they're just playing it out. They're just playing it out. Goddamn, you gotta respect that shit. You gotta respect this kind of dedication. You gotta respect this level of dedication to the craft, to the grind. They pledge allegiance to the grind. All right, you know what? I was wrong about Hulk. I was wrong about Hulk. That motherfucker is huge. That's a big number. Yikes. I was honestly thinking about inching that. I still might. Oh god, please move that. Okay, chat, do we think he's gonna move it to the middle? Should I make the sickest Enchantress read of all time? He's never moving that to the middle. That's not a thing anyone actually does. Does High Evo work with rocks? No. Wave second. Good point, but it doesn't matter because that's a dark dimension. It's Luke in the bush? Yeah, I'm dead to that. Well... my own hazmat's gonna kill me here to their loot cage, I think. Okay, we got there. Never mind. We did it.